Rick, should he be more nervous?
You know, I think he should, Katie, because look, what we have right now is a president who believes he can govern entirely by executive order. But the reality is he's still going to have to go to the Senate for appointments. He's still going to have to go to the House and the Senate to do CRs and to keep the lights on in the government for the next 2 years. So as he continues to alienate folks in the Senate, and now you've got this sort of emerging coalition of Cornyn, Tillis, Cassidy, who are very angry about the way they've been treated. And you've got these folks in the House who I think there's a sort of vestigial survival instinct kicking in, you know, not only with the Brian Fitzpatricks of the world, but with some of the others who are increasingly nervous that Donald Trump's not giving them anything to run on. They are not going to go home and campaign on the ballroom and the reflecting pool and the arch. They're really in a tough spot right now. And as Jake's pointed out correctly, you know, the primary season, Fitzpatrick is liberated because the primary season is over for him. There will be other primaries ending soon. And as those do, that takes away Trump's biggest weapon against any of these folks to intimidate them.
I think that's a really good point. That is something that we should underscore. Max, are you getting bored of this conversation? And I don't mean it, this particular one that we're having right now, but just the idea in general that we're just always waiting for the Republican Party to grow a spine here?
Yeah, look, I am kind of shocked that we're trying to make news out of the fact that Donald Trump declared he was against forever wars. He united the Republican Party on that basic principle. He then moves on to actually initiate forever wars all around, to include the current one in Iran. The Republican Party then flips back towards him. And we're trying to make news out of the fact that Thomas Massie, who's just lost his election, and three others, to include Brian Fitzpatrick, who's the quintessential Trump opposition guy, are the only ones standing up against him. This is the Republican Party still united in support of forever wars, which is not only deeply unpopular, but deeply immoral at the same time.
And also antithetical to what they campaigned on, which is interesting and crazy. Getting back to the consequences here and just going back to what might happen in this election cycle, James, you wrote me a little note that I think it's important to mention. We talk about how in these midterms, the other party almost always wins. Jake mentioned two exceptions. Should we consider that maybe this is also an exceptional year, not because of anything amazing policy-wise that might be introduced by this president, and maybe something will change, who knows, but because the Republican Party has been changing the rules mid-cycle?
Well, I know Jake...
And the Democrats have been, too, by the way.
Yeah, no, I know Jake's a golf fan, so let's use that as metaphor. There is no doubt that he's correct that the Republican Party and Donald Trump, they've made a lot of bogeys. They've made some double and triple bogeys. But the mid-cycle redistricting is different. When he references the historical trends, we've never had this kind of mid-cycle redistricting. And if you look at the way the redistricting process has gone so far and the way it's projected to be, I think you're talking about at least a gain of 10 seats from the redistricting process in the House. So, yes, he's absolutely right. And he knows this, right? He's absolutely right about the historical trends. But we've never seen that. So, in a sense, you are starting the race ahead despite where you should be based on traditional politics and traditional policy. So I'm less sanguine from the standpoint of the Democratic Party, a little bit more.
And Max, you were saying a moment ago that you're not so sanguine either, because you believe that even if the Republicans do lose, despite the redistricting, that Donald Trump's going to try to meddle.
Well, I think that we certainly should actually start to think, particularly governors in Democratic states, what can they do to push back against Trump meddling here? But there is a sense here that Democrats have had momentum and they can't get too overconfident. Right? Republicans felt this way in 2022, and Democrats had a very surprisingly positive showing, losing far fewer seats than anyone thought. So there's still a lot of time to go. But here's the interesting thing about elections, particularly midterm elections. They are based around how mobilized and exuberant your base is. Democrats have never seen levels of this base enthusiasm. And we also traditionally find that sentiments get burned in by the summertime.
Yeah.
But you can't rebound when you...
Because people go on vacation, they tune out, they give themselves a mental break.
God bless them. They deserve it.
Yeah. All right, let me ask you about the other politics happening right now in Congress. Jake, there were a couple or three Republicans who joined Democrats to try to end the weaponization fund once and for all. And they were an interesting group. It was Susan Collins, it was Dan Sullivan, and it was John Husted. It was not Thom Tillis. It was not John Cornyn. It was not Bill Cassidy. Why these three and not what we've dubbed the YOLO caucus?
Well, it's a little bit complicated. This was actually a motion to recommit, to basically send the bill back to committee to add the language. There was a subsequent amendment by Thom Tillis that did seek to close down the fund and then redirect those funds to anti-fraud efforts at the DOJ. That got far more Republican votes, and although it did not pass because of reconciliation rules, I won't bore you. They were set at 60 votes instead of 51 votes. So it was a very high hurdle. Democrats were against it because they said it was starting a new slush fund somewhere else in government. It doesn't matter. My base case is eventually during this reconciliation process, there will be a vote that Republicans and Democrats will vote for to ensure that Donald Trump cannot put this fund into place at any point in the future. It's just amazing to me, Katie, how much I said this on our podcast this morning, but it seems like Trump is punking Republicans. I mean, the stuff that he is doing right now is so antithetical to the things that you would be doing if you wanted to get things done, between the ballroom, the anti-weaponization fund, the constant discussion about the reflecting pool. I mean, all of these things. Yesterday, he was on a podcast saying he loves the idea of the weaponization fund after his acting attorney general was up here saying that he's closing it down. They're not doing anything with it. So I don't know what to think. I can tell you this. There are a lot of Republican senators, if given the right amendment, which they have the power to do, this is a vote-a-rama, that would vote for this and will vote for this. I want to say one thing about redistricting. I'm sorry, I can't contain myself. It's going to be fewer than 10 seats. Republicans have whiffed in South Carolina. They have taken a pass in Georgia. They're going to keep 2 seats. Democrats are going to keep 2 seats in Texas, probably, that Republicans want to draw. So, yes, Republicans have an edge, not a huge edge, not nearly as good for them as they thought it would be. So I still do think, I don't think it's going to be a 240-seat Democratic majority, but if you're betting today, people I talk to, what the hell do I know? But the people I talk to think it'll be 225. I mean, anything could happen, but that's what a lot of people think.
Well, doesn't that say a lot to you, though, Rick, that they whiffed, that they thought they were going to be able to redraw all these maps and find all these other Republican voters that they could wring out and push out the Democratic voters, and they were not able to, even in very safe states. Sure. Doesn't that also tell us something about this political moment and what the electorate wants and how angry the electorate is?
Absolutely, Katie. And look, in Texas, they went with the presumption that the Hispanic numbers would look just like they did in 2024. That is completely inverted now. They are in deep trouble in those 2 seats, as Jake just mentioned. In Florida, they thought they would snatch 4 seats from the Democrats, but what they've done is turned R plus 10 and R plus 12 Republican seats into R plus 4 and 5 Republican seats because they had to spread the peanut butter too thin over the toast. So I think they've put themselves at risk. They are going to pick up a few in some of these states that they've done it in. Alabama, it looks like a closed case now. But in a lot of them, the voters that they thought were there from 2024 in their mental model, those people are very angry with them right now. In the Florida case, independents are now against Trump, and Trump policy is about 2.5 to 1. It is turned upside down for the Republicans in a lot of these states. And the things that are driving voter behavior this year, the anger over high gas prices, the anger over inflation, the anger over this war, the anger over tariffs and their destructive impact on America, those things aren't going to go away. You can't flip that switch off. And the Republicans have nothing to offer voters right now. The ballroom isn't going to do it. A vote on the weaponization fund, I want them to vote for the weaponization fund. That will be around their necks like a boat anchor come November. So they're misreading the country, and even redistricting isn't going to get them back to a majority status at this point.